Hello everyone, I hope everyone is having a great day so far. As we continue to learn a little bit more about cell membranes and how cells work, we're going to learn about how they transport nutrients and molecules in and out of the cell. So today we're learning about the types of different transport. But I like to ask some questions to get you guys thinking about before we just get started on notes. So the first thing is, how can things move in and out of a cell? What are some of the ways that we've mentioned or different things that you guys can think of how things move in and out of a cell? Another thing is, how does an active person act? So we're going to be talking about active transport. So I wanted to think, what does an active person do? And then also, what does a passive person do? So just really thinking about each one of these words, active and passive, and trying to use what we already know about those words so that we can understand better when we're using them in our science. So please take a minute, think about those. Our objectives today, by the end of today, we want to be able to describe the difference between active and passive transport and also be able to compare and contrast simple and facilitated diffusion. So I have a video which I have linked as always in the same spot. I have our Google Classroom. We're going to start with some vocab just so that we're all on the same page. So the first word we're going to learn about is a concentration. So sometimes people use the word concentration to mean that we're thinking, we're concentrating. Is another root word, I should say, of it. But concentration is the amount of something in a specific area. So, for example, if I would say something is very concentrated, there's a lot of whatever there is in that area. So, I like to think of this as when I am having a drink, like a drink of juice. If the juice is very strong, I would say it's concentrated. For example, orange juice sometimes can be very concentrated when there's a lot of oranges or orange flavoring in the juice. Or I also like to think of this as a group of people. So if we have a lot of people in one area, we'll say that's a concentrated group. We also have the word diffusion, which is the moving of a substance from a place of high concentration to low concentration. So we're using this word concentration, and the diffusion is just how the substances or things move away. So we're always going, not always, most of the time, or naturally, things want to move from a place of high concentration to low concentration because they want more space around them. You guys have ever had maybe a candle in a room that smells very nice? As soon as you light it, it starts in one part of the room, but it can fill the whole room and diffuse into the whole room because the high concentration of the smell will be around the candle at first, and then it will go diffuse into areas of lower concentration being the rest of the room. So we're going to talk a little bit about how that works with a cell membrane as well. So our types of transport, we have active transport, and what is important about active transport is that it requires energy. And then we have passive transport, and that does not require energy. So those are the two differences between them. Our active transport we can see right here, and uses specific proteins and energy to move molecules. And then we have passive, which just allows our objects to go from a high concentration to a low concentration. And we can see that with the circles and the triangles. The circles are going from a lot of circles to an area with fewer, and same with the triangles. There are a few different types of passive transport we're going to talk about, which is simple diffusion. We have facilitated diffusion. And then the last thing we're going to learn about is a special type of facilitated diffusion known as osmosis. So that's kind of how the breakdown works. The first thing we're going to talk about is active transport. So our active transport, the definition is it uses energy, or usually in the form of ATP, and a protein to move molecules across a membrane. So we can see that here we have sodium going from the bottom to the top and potassium going from the top to the bottom. And this works only because we have ATP coming and giving energy to a protein. Active transport also goes against our concentration gradient. So the idea of it is we're always going from a lower concentration to a higher concentration. So normally things like to go from high concentrations to low concentrations. But active transport needs energy because we're trying to push a bunch of things where they don't want to be. So we can see this Na is smaller because it has a lower concentration, and this Na is bigger because it's more Na in here. If we were to draw it like this, or we can see it like this, we have a few squares out here, and we're pushing them into a cell that usually would not want them in there. So we're going against our concentration gradient, or meaning we go from low to high concentration. The next thing is passive transport. So this always moves from high to low concentration, and it does not require energy. So we'll move this, we'll have different molecules, different things move to maintain homeostasis. We've used that word before. Homeostasis just means maintaining the same state, or keeping our normal processes as they should be. So we can see we have three different types of passive transport. We have simple diffusion, so we can just see these little circles going in and out. We have facilitated, where we're using a protein, and then a special type of osmosis where we're using a protein as well. So this will just continue to happen until everything is equal, until we have the same amount of molecules on the inside and the outside. Alright, so here's our idea. Simple diffusion, we're moving from high to low concentration. I like to think of it as it moves with the flow. So our flow is naturally going from high to low, and our simple diffusion can go across the cell membrane by itself, and it works for small non-charged molecules like gases. This picture does a really good job of explaining it. This dotted line would look like, or is going to be, our cell membrane. We have more circles on the left than the right. So diffusion will occur and things will come inside until we have the same amount of circles on the left and the right. But since it's simple diffusion, only small things can go across. So this would have to be a small molecule, or a non-charged molecule, that can go across our membrane. Then we have our facilitated diffusion. Again, our facilitated diffusion moves with the flow. This uses channel proteins to move molecules. You could also use carrier proteins. I should have put carrier proteins as well. Oh, I underlined it there. Uses channel and carrier proteins. Sorry about that, guys. Uses channel and carrier proteins, and it's used for charged ions, charged particles, and then large particles as well. So we can see we have more circles over here. We even have a high amount of circles and triangles, and a low amount of circles and triangles. So they're both going to be coming this way into the cell through our cell membrane. And this all happens without energy. No energy is used because it is a type of passive transport. Finally, we have osmosis. This is a really good video for explaining osmosis, but the few things I'm going to mention on it now is that osmosis is the diffusion of water in and out of the cell. So it's a type of facilitated diffusion, and it uses channel proteins. And just like any other nutrients, our water will move back and forth to create an equilibrium, or have everything equal on either side. So we want the same amount of water inside as outside. So I have a couple of examples that we're going to go through and label if it would be what kind of transport it would be, I should say. So first, a sugar molecule is moved into the cell using a carrier protein. This process does not require energy. So what type of transport would this be? I see that it does not require energy, so it would be some kind of passive transport, but we're using a carrier protein. So when we're using a protein and we're getting a larger molecule like a sugar molecule into a cell, then it would be facilitated diffusion, which is a type of passive transport. Our next one is a sodium ion is moved from a lower concentration to a higher concentration using energy. So we're going from low to high and using energy. Those are both ways to describe active transport. We have oxygen is moved across the cell membrane from high concentration to low concentration. So if we're going from high to low, it's likely a type it is a type of diffusion, and I would say, since we do not have a protein mentioned, that it would be a simple diffusion or passive transport. Our last one is water is moved into the cell through a channel protein from higher concentration to a lower concentration. So I would say this is a sorry about that, I was yawning. I would say this is osmosis. So whenever we see water moving, we're talking about osmosis, which is a passive type of transport. That is all I had for you guys today on the different types of transport. I have these 4 main kinds. We have active, and then 3 different kinds of passive, being facilitated, simple, and osmosis. If you guys have any questions, please let me know.